In 2002, with active U.S. and British participation, UN Secretary General Kofi Annan brought together representatives from both Cypriot communities to negotiate a plan for peace. 2 years of negotiation and 5 drafts later, the Annan Plan was put to a nationwide vote. The Turkish Cypriots approved the Annan Plan, while the Greek Cypriots rejected it. Significantly, the Annan Plan was voted down by a 2/3 majority of all Cypriots.
The Greek Cypriots weren't offered anything by the Annan Plan. They were being asked to risk everything, in a sense, for a perhaps a maybe and a part of a perhaps and a maybe. The Turkish Cypriots were offered the world, basically. The Greek Cypriots were offered not much at all.
Well, the Annan Plan looked very much like a cobbled together device to try to give the illusion that the Cyprus problem was being solved without the problem actually being solved. The Greek Cypriots, for the most part, were asked to make major concessions up front and in terms of very real substance in exchange for largely theoretical possible future concessions on the part of the Turkish Cypriot side and, more importantly, on the part of the Turkish government.
The problem is not the Greek Cypriots and the Turkish Cypriots. The problem is Turkey, actually. If the Greek Cypriots and Turkish Cypriots had been allowed to negotiate a deal between them, I think they would have resolved the problem by now. The former president of the Turkish administration in the north, Rauf Denktaş, was more interested in being a Turkish politician than a Turkish Cypriot politician. So he played the game by getting Turkey on his side, and he also tried to prolong the stay of the Turkish army in Cyprus, which the Turkish army wanted to happen. I mean, the Turkish army likes occupying Cyprus.
We are not saying that Turkish military will stay here in the island, but we are saying that with a solution they will go.
Turkish troops were going to remain in Cyprus indefinitely. There was no provision for having those troops or even a major portion of that occupation force to withdraw as part of the settlement. And it was hardly surprising that Greek Cypriot voters rejected that settlement.
In 2004, the Republic of Cyprus became a full member of the European Union. This has created a real possibility of a settlement for one simple reason. Turkey aspires to join the EU as well, and each EU member must consent to the membership of Turkey.
Probably the most significant leverage there is on Turkish behavior is their desire to enter the EU, and therefore the EU is in a position, as some significant forces in the EU have asserted, that Turkey has to do a number of things to warrant EU membership, and one of them is to peacefully resolve the situation in Cyprus.
The Cypriot strategy of getting into the European Union was nothing short of brilliant. Not only did they highlight the importance of Cyprus as a vibrant economic player, that this would be a useful addition to the European Union, they made a compelling moral case that they would be able to meet all of the criteria set out by the European Union for membership and would be able to do so within a relatively short period of time, and that they should not be punished simply because Turkey had committed an act of aggression and continued to occupy 37% of Cypriot territory.
I think it obviously, in my view, absurd on the face of it that a European Union member should militarily occupy another member of the European Union, and second, refuse to accord it diplomatic recognition.
With the prospect of entry into the EU, Turkey stands at one of the most significant crossroads in its history.
Turkey is going to be disappointed ultimately if it believes it can get into the European Union on its own terms, and especially if it assumes that it can get in while it continues to occupy Cyprus. That is just not going to happen.
Turkey is faced now more and more with a very sharp choice to make. It can modernize itself, it can Europeanize itself, it can democratize itself, and it can retain its secular character, or it can fall back into some version of Ottomanism or theocracy and rejoin the ranks of the backward nations.
Although the land is divided and the future uncertain, the government-controlled portion of the Republic of Cyprus thrives as a center of tourism, commerce, and international banking. After more than 3 decades of turmoil, the elements of a solution are in place. The question then becomes whether there is a constructive role for a future U.S. administration.
The problem now is who is going to play the role of a third-party mediator, with the UN having tried and failed, if the United States does not play that role. I suppose, in a sense, the Europeans will be working on that issue, but I think it would make a much stronger situation internationally if we were to work with the Europeans and come up with some kind of a structure and try to sell it to both sides.
If there is not much influence exerted on Ankara, on the military, I don't see any change happening. So we do rely on the United States, because the United States is the only country that can exercise their influence on Turkey, to exercise a leverage on Turkey.
My approach would be to be very candid with the Turkish government, that this is an obstacle to continued close cooperation between the United States and Turkey, that if Turkey expects the United States to really weigh in with its friends in the European Union, to treat Turkey's candidacy for admission very seriously, then the Cyprus issue has to be solved, and solved equitably. That we simply will not try to muscle the European Union on Turkey's membership while Turkey continues to occupy a significant part of the territory of its neighbors. Be very candid about that, that the days of Henry Kissinger's willingness to look the other way are over.
Although the U.S. has allowed its credibility as an honest broker in the Cyprus issue to erode, it may still perform a constructive role by affirming its commitment to the rule of law.
I think we have seen almost 2 generations of American policymakers now, that if it is a choice between standing up for moral principles, standing up for the rights of the Cypriot population, or placating Ankara, the United States will opt to placate Ankara every single time.
When it lifted the arms embargo on Turkey in 1978, Congress enacted legislation which remains law to this day. It sets forth principles guiding U.S. policy in Cyprus for a just settlement. These principles include establishing a free and independent government, guaranteeing the protection of human rights, and the withdrawal of Turkish military forces from Cyprus. During the Cold War, President Eisenhower stated that there can be no peace without law, and there can be no law if we were to invoke one code of international conduct for those who oppose us and another for our friends.
The interests, the self-interest of the United States, if you want to call it that, I don't mind. The realpolitik, if you prefer. All of this, plus the importance of Cyprus to the integrity of the principles of the European Union, which is also surely in the national interest of the United States. All of these press in one direction: the withdrawal of the occupiers, the right of Cypriots to self-determination.
Well, Cyprus is important to the United States because it's a friendly country, and it's so much tied up in the politics of the last 3 decades. It's really extraordinary that there hasn't been a solution to the Cyprus problem now in 45 years. And it's important to us because we want to try to achieve a Europe that is whole, free, and at peace, stable and united. And that won't happen until the dividing lines have been erased in Cyprus, until justice has been done, until the conflict has been resolved.
By abandoning the rule of law and its principles, the U.S. had a role in causing the present division of Cyprus. It remains to be seen whether the U.S. can perform a role in reunifying Cyprus.
The status quo is not an option for us because it is not for our benefit, not ultimately.
Well, I consider Cyprus as a whole, and this is how I lived before in Kyrenia, which was a mixed town, and I don't believe that being separated can bring peace.